The Gillette Stadium parking lot was nearly empty when Tom Brady finally emerged from the locker room at 2:47 a.m. The crushing 28-3 defeat to the Miami Dolphins still echoed in his mind. Not because of the score, but because of what happened in the final minutes that nobody else had witnessed. His hands shook as he reached for his car keys, and for the first time in his legendary career, the GOAT felt like he was drowning. The media had called it his worst performance in a decade. 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles, and a completion percentage that made rookie quarterbacks look elite. But they didn't know about the phone call he'd received during halftime. They didn't know about the voice on the other end that made his blood freeze and his world crumble in an instant. "Tommy." The voice had been weak, barely a whisper through the locker room phone. "Tommy, I need you to know something before it's too late." That voice belonged to Father Martinez, the priest who had baptized Tom as a baby, who had been like a second father to him growing up in San Mateo. The man who held a secret that could destroy everything Tom had built. His marriage, his legacy, his children's future. And now, at 73 years old, Father Martinez was dying, and his conscience wouldn't let him take this secret to the grave. Tom's drive home that night took 3 hours instead of 30 minutes. He pulled over twice, once to throw up on the side of Route 1, and once to call Giselle and tell her he'd be late, though he couldn't explain why his voice was shaking. When he finally walked through the front door of his Boston mansion, his wife was waiting in the kitchen, still awake despite the late hour. "What happened out there tonight?" Giselle asked, her Brazilian accent thick with concern. She'd watched every game for 15 years, but she'd never seen him play like that, distracted, unfocused, like his mind was 1,000 miles away. Tom looked at his wife, the mother of his children, the woman who had stood by him through scandals and championships alike. How could he tell her that everything they'd built together might be based on a lie? How could he explain that the foundation of his entire life was about to crumble? "I need some time," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I need to figure some things out." Giselle reached for his hand, but Tom pulled away. The hurt in her eyes was immediate and sharp. In their entire relationship, through Deflategate, through the constant media scrutiny, through the pressures of being married to the most famous athlete in America, Tom had never shut her out like this. "Tom, whatever it is, we can handle it together. We always do." But this was different. This was about something that happened long before Giselle, long before the NFL, long before Tom Brady became a household name. This was about a scared 17-year-old kid who made a choice that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The next morning, Tom called Coach Belichick and told him he needed a few days for a family emergency. He didn't take calls from teammates, didn't respond to texts from Julian Edelman or Rob Gronkowski asking if he was okay. He simply vanished from the public eye, leaving behind a trail of worried friends and a media circus that grew larger with each passing day. Day 2 of his disappearance found Tom driving his old pickup truck. Not the Tesla or the Aston Martin, but the beat-up Ford he'd kept from his college days, toward the Central Valley of California. The 8-hour drive gave him time to remember, time to relive the night that changed everything when he was just a high school senior with dreams of playing college football. It was October 15th, 1994. Tom was driving home from a party in his friend's car, a 1989 Honda Civic with a broken headlight and expired registration. He'd had 2 beers, not enough to impair him, but enough that he knew he shouldn't be driving. But it was late, and he didn't want to call his parents, didn't want to explain why he was at a party on a school night when he was supposed to be home studying. The accident happened on Highway 84, just outside of Woodside. Tom was coming around a blind curve when he saw the bicycle in his headlights. An elderly man riding on the shoulder, wearing dark clothes with no reflectors. Tom swerved hard to the right, felt the Honda skid on the wet pavement, heard the sickening thud as the car clipped the bicycle. He stopped the car, hands shaking, heart pounding. The cyclist was lying motionless in the ditch, his neck bent at an unnatural angle. Tom checked for a pulse, tried CPR like they'd taught him in health class, but he knew it was too late. The man was gone. That's when panic set in. Tom was 17, already being recruited by major colleges, already being called the next great California quarterback. A DUI, a vehicular manslaughter charge. It would all be over before it started. His family would be devastated. His scholarship offers would disappear. His dreams would die along with the man in the ditch. So Tom made the worst decision of his life. He loaded the man's body into the Honda's trunk, drove to a deserted area near Crystal Springs Reservoir, and staged the scene to look like the cyclist had lost control and crashed into the trees. He wiped down the bicycle, scattered some debris, made it look like an accident. Then he drove home, parked the Honda behind his friend's house, and never spoke of that night again. The cyclist's name was Roberto Alvarez. He was 68 years old, a janitor at the local elementary school, beloved by the children he served. He had 7 grandchildren and was 3 months away from retirement. The police found his body 2 days later and ruled it an accidental death. An elderly man who lost control of his bicycle on a dark, wet road. Tom thought he'd gotten away with it. For 28 years, he carried the secret like a stone in his chest, but he believed it was buried forever. Until Father Martinez called him that night after the Dolphins game and told him the truth that would shatter his world. "I know what you did, Tommy," the priest had whispered into the phone. "I've always known. Roberto Alvarez was my brother." The words hit Tom like a physical blow. Roberto had been Father Martinez's younger brother, the baby of their family, the one who'd never married but who loved children more than anything in the world. And Father Martinez had spent 28 years watching Tom Brady become a legend, knowing that his success was built on his brother's grave. "I found paint from the Honda on Roberto's clothes," Father Martinez continued, his voice getting weaker. "Blue paint. I remember your friend Kevin had a blue Honda. I put it together years ago, but I couldn't bear to destroy you. You were just a child. But now I'm dying, Tommy, and my brother deserves justice. The family deserves to know the truth." Tom had tried to speak, tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, Father Martinez had said the words that would haunt him for the next 10 days. "You have until I die to make this right. Tell the truth yourself, or I'll have to tell it for you. Roberto's family deserves to know." By day 3 of Tom's disappearance, the media speculation had reached a fever pitch. ESPN was running 24-hour coverage, analyzing every possible reason why the greatest quarterback of all time had simply vanished. Some said it was marital problems with Giselle. Others speculated about gambling debts or secret injuries. Nobody imagined the truth was far darker than any of their theories. Tom was holed up in a cheap motel in Modesto, not far from where Roberto Alvarez was buried. He'd spent hours at the cemetery, standing over the simple headstone, trying to find words for an apology that was 28 years too late. But how do you apologize to a dead man? How do you explain to 7 grandchildren that their grandfather died because a scared teenager chose his own future over doing the right thing? On day 4, Tom finally answered his phone when Julian Edelman's name appeared on the screen for the 15th time. "Bro, where the hell are you?" Jules' voice was frantic. "The whole world thinks you're dead or in rehab or having a nervous breakdown. Giselle is going crazy. The team doesn't know what to tell the media." "I can't tell you where I am," Tom said, his voice hoarse from crying. "I can't tell you why. But I need you to know that if something happens to me, if my career ends tomorrow, I want you to remember the good times. Remember the championships, the comebacks, the brotherhood we built. Don't remember what comes next." "Tom, you're scaring me. What's going on? Are you in trouble? Are you hurt?" Tom closed his eyes, thinking of Roberto Alvarez's grandchildren, now grown with children of their own. I've been in trouble for 28 years, Jules. I just never had to face it until now. Day 5 brought a visit from an unexpected source. Tom was eating breakfast at a Denny's near the cemetery when a woman in her 40s approached his table. She had kind eyes and graying hair, and something about her face looked familiar. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you Tom Brady?" Tom tensed, ready to deny it, but something in her voice stopped him. He nodded. "My name is Maria Santos. Roberto Alvarez was my grandfather." The coffee cup slipped from Tom's hands, shattering on the floor. The woman, Roberto's granddaughter, slid into the booth across from him, and Tom felt like he was going to be sick. "I know why you're here," Maria continued. "Father Martinez called me yesterday. He told me everything." Tom's world spun. I don't know what to say. I've wanted to tell the truth for so long, but I was scared, and then too much time passed, and I didn't know how to." Maria held up her hand, stopping him. "My grandfather was riding his bicycle that night because he'd given his car to my mother. She was a single mom, working 2 jobs, couldn't afford a car payment. He took the bus to work every day and only rode the bike at night when the buses weren't running." Each word was like a knife in Tom's chest. "He was a good man. He was the best man," Maria said, tears forming in her eyes. "But here's what you don't know. That night, October 15th, 1994, he wasn't supposed to be on that road. He was supposed to be at home, watching TV, being safe. But he got a call that his great-grandson, my nephew, was sick and needed to go to the hospital. My mom's car had broken down, and she didn't have money for a taxi. So Grandpa got on his bicycle and rode 5 miles in the dark to help his family. He died being the hero he always was." Tom broke down completely then, right there in the Denny's, sobbing like the 17-year-old boy he'd been when he made the worst mistake of his life. Other customers stared, some taking pictures with their phones, but he didn't care anymore. Nothing mattered except the weight of what he'd done. "I'm so sorry," he managed between sobs. "I was just a kid, and I was scared, and I made the worst choice possible. I've regretted it every single day since." Maria reached across the table and took his trembling hands in hers. "I know," she said simply. "Father Martinez told us how you've carried this guilt, how it's eaten at you all these years. How can you even look at me?" Tom asked. "I killed your grandfather and then built a career on top of his grave. I've made millions while his family suffered. Our family didn't suffer because you became successful," Maria said gently. "We suffered because we lost the most important person in our world. Your success didn't take anything away from us that wasn't already gone." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. A large family gathering with multiple generations, all wearing Patriots jerseys with Brady's number 12. "We've been rooting for you for 20 years, she said. "Not because we knew the truth, but because Grandpa loved football. He would have been so proud to see someone from his community make it to the top. Even now, knowing what happened, part of us is still proud. You took something terrible and built something beautiful with your life." Tom stared at the photo, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. "How can you forgive me?" "Because holding on to anger for 28 years would just create more victims," Maria said. "Grandpa wouldn't want that. He'd want healing." Day 6 brought Tom to Roberto's old neighborhood, now gentrified beyond recognition. The elementary school where Roberto had worked as a janitor was gone, replaced by luxury condos. But Tom found the community center that had been built in Roberto's honor, funded by donations from the families he'd served. Inside, he met Mrs. Chun, who had been a teacher when Roberto was the janitor. She was in her 80s now, but her eyes lit up when Tom introduced himself. "Roberto talked about you, you know," she said, settling into a chair in the center's main room. "Not you specifically, but he always talked about the local kids who were getting football scholarships. He was so proud of the young athletes from the area. Tom felt another piece of his heart break. "I wish I could have met him properly. He would have liked you," Mrs. Chun said with certainty. He believed that everyone deserved a second chance. He used to tell the children who got in trouble, "One mistake doesn't define your whole life. What matters is what you do after you make the mistake." That night, Tom called Father Martinez from his motel room. The priest was in hospice now, his voice weaker than before. "I met Roberto's granddaughter," Tom said. "Maria. She forgave me. The family has always been remarkable," Father Martinez wheezed. "Even in their grief, they chose love over anger. Roberto raised them well." "I want to make this right," Tom said. "I want to tell the truth. But I need to know, will it help anyone? Will it bring Roberto back or heal any wounds? Or will it just create more pain?" Father Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "That's not the question, Tommy. The question is, can you live with yourself if you don't tell the truth?" Day 7 was the hardest. Tom drove to the exact spot where the accident happened. The road had been widened and improved over the years, but he recognized the curve, the guardrail, the trees where he'd staged Roberto's accident. He stood there for hours, imagining Roberto pedaling through the darkness to help his sick great-grandson, never knowing he had only minutes left to live. That evening, Tom finally called Giselle. "Where are you?" she asked immediately. "Tom, I've been worried sick. The kids are asking about you. Jack thinks you're mad at him about something." The mention of his children broke Tom's heart all over again. How would they react when they learned their father was responsible for an old man's death? Would they still love him? Would they understand that sometimes good people make terrible mistakes? "I'm not mad at anyone," Tom said. "I'm dealing with something from my past. Something I should have dealt with a long time ago. Then come home, and we'll deal with it together. Whatever it is, we can handle it. This is different, Giselle. This could end everything. My career, my reputation, maybe even our family. Our family is stronger than whatever you think you've done," Giselle said firmly. "I don't care if you robbed a bank or punched a reporter or whatever stupid thing you think is so terrible. You're a good man, Tom Brady. You're not perfect, but you're good. And good men face their problems instead of running from them." Tom closed his eyes, drawing strength from his wife's unwavering faith in him. "I need 2 more days. Then I'll come home, and I'll tell you everything. And after that, we'll see if you still feel the same way." Day 8 brought an unexpected visitor to Tom's motel. Julian Edelman was standing in the parking lot when Tom returned from his daily visit to Roberto's grave. "How did you find me?" Tom asked. "Your credit card, genius. You've been using it at the same gas station every day." "I'm not a detective, but I'm not an idiot either." They sat in Tom's motel room, and slowly, painfully, Tom told his best friend everything. About the accident, about Roberto, about the 28 years of guilt, about Father Martinez's ultimatum. Julian listened without interruption, his face growing more serious with each detail. When Tom finished, Julian was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "Holy shit, Tom. This is huge. I know. It's going to destroy everything." "No," Julian said firmly. "It doesn't have to. Look, what you did as a kid was terrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But what you've done since then, the charities, the kids you've helped, the way you've carried yourself, that matters too. I built all of that on a lie." "You built it on guilt," Julian corrected. "There's a difference. You've been trying to make up for this your whole career, haven't you? The TB12 Foundation, all the youth programs, the way you treat people. It's all been you trying to earn forgiveness for something you did when you were 17. Tom realized his friend was right. Every charitable donation, every youth camp, every moment he'd spent being the good guy in the media. It had all been his unconscious attempt to balance the scales. Day 9 brought Tom back to the cemetery, but this time he wasn't alone. Maria Santos was there with her entire family, her mother, her children, her aunts and uncles, and Roberto's other grandchildren and great-grandchildren. They stood in a circle around Roberto's grave, and Maria handed Tom a football. "We want you to have this," she said. "It was Grandpa's. He bought it when you got drafted by the Patriots. He said he wanted to throw it around with his great-grandkids and tell them about the local boy who made it to the NFL." Tom held the football with trembling hands. It was old and worn, clearly well used by generations of children learning to throw and catch. "We've been talking as a family," Maria's mother said. She was in her 70s, Roberto's daughter, and she had his same kind eyes. "We know what you're planning to do. We know you want to tell the world what happened." Tom nodded. "I have to. I can't carry this anymore." "We understand," she continued, "and we want you to know that we support you. But we also want you to know that my father's legacy isn't defined by how he died. It's defined by how he lived. And part of that legacy is the good you've done with your life since then." Roberto's youngest grandson, now a man in his 30s with children of his own, stepped forward. "My kids wear your jersey," he said. "They think you're a hero. And you know what? Even knowing the truth, I still think you're a hero. Not because you're perfect, but because you've spent your whole life trying to make up for one terrible mistake." Tom looked around the circle of faces, Roberto's family, the people he'd wronged most deeply, and saw nothing but compassion and forgiveness. It was more than he'd ever dared hope for. That night, Tom called Father Martinez one last time. The priest was barely conscious, his voice just a whisper. "Father, it's Tom. I want you to know that I'm going to tell the truth. Tomorrow, I'm going to hold a press conference and tell the world what I did." "Good," Father Martinez breathed. "Roberto can finally rest. Father, will you forgive me too?" The line was quiet for so long that Tom thought the old priest had passed away. Then finally, "I forgave you years ago, Tommy. I've been waiting for you to forgive yourself." Day 10 was the longest day of Tom Brady's life. He flew back to Boston that morning and went straight to Gillette Stadium. By noon, every major news outlet in the country had reporters gathered for what they'd been told would be a major announcement from Tom Brady. Giselle was in the front row, holding his hands as he told her everything before the press conference. She cried, she held him, and she told him she loved him no matter what. His children were too young to fully understand, but they sensed their father's pain and surrounded him with hugs and reassurance. At 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Tom Brady walked to the podium in the Gillette Stadium press room. The assembled media expected a retirement announcement or news about an injury. Instead, they got something no one could have anticipated. 28 years ago, Tom began, his voice steady despite the cameras and microphones pointed at him. "When I was 17 years old, I made the worst mistake of my life. I was driving home from a party, and I hit a cyclist with my car. The man died, and instead of calling the police and facing the consequences, I staged the scene to make it look like an accident. I've carried that secret and that guilt every day since." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, and Tom could see the shock on every face in the audience. But he continued. "The man I killed was Roberto Alvarez. He was 68 years old, a janitor at an elementary school, a grandfather and great-grandfather. He was riding his bicycle that night to help his sick great-grandson get to the hospital. He died being the hero he had always been, and I robbed his family of the truth about his death for 28 years. Tom went on to tell the entire story. The accident, the cover-up, Father Martinez's call, his 10 days of soul-searching, and his meetings with Roberto's family. He spoke for nearly an hour, answering every question with complete honesty, holding nothing back. "I know this will end my career," he concluded. "I know I'll face criminal charges and civil lawsuits. I know I'll lose endorsements and probably my place in the Hall of Fame. I accept all of that. What I can't accept anymore is living with this lie. Roberto Alvarez deserves better. His family deserves better. And the fans who have supported me all these years deserve the truth." The immediate aftermath was exactly what Tom had expected. Within hours, Nike had suspended his endorsement deal. The Patriots released a statement saying they were reviewing the situation. Social media exploded with a mixture of condemnation and support. Legal experts debated whether Tom could still be prosecuted for a crime committed as a minor nearly 3 decades ago. But something unexpected happened too. Maria Santos and Roberto's family held their own press conference, standing together to express their forgiveness and support for Tom's decision to tell the truth. They talked about Roberto's belief in second chances and redemption. They shared stories of the charity work Tom had done over the years, much of it anonymously, and how they now understood it had been his way of trying to honor Roberto's memory. The Alvarez family established the Roberto Alvarez Second Chances Foundation, with Tom as the primary donor and Maria as the director. The foundation would help young people who had made serious mistakes get the support and opportunities they needed to rebuild their lives. 3 months later, prosecutors announced they would not pursue criminal charges, citing the passage of time, Tom's cooperation, and the wishes of the victim's family. The NFL, after its own investigation, suspended Tom for the first 4 games of the season, but allowed him to return afterward. When Tom took the field for his first game back, something remarkable happened. The crowd, Patriots fans who had every right to feel betrayed, gave him a standing ovation that lasted nearly 10 minutes. They held signs reading "Second Chances" and "Roberto's legacy lives on" and "Truth and Redemption." Tom played 3 more seasons before retiring, and every touchdown pass, every victory, was dedicated to Roberto Alvarez's memory. He never spoke about his career records or his Super Bowl wins without mentioning the man whose death had shaped his life in ways no one could have imagined. At his retirement ceremony, Roberto's entire family was in attendance. Maria Santos spoke about how Tom's courage to tell the truth had given their family closure they never knew they needed. She talked about how Roberto would have been proud of the man Tom had become, not despite his mistake, but because of how he'd chosen to live with it. Tom's final words as an active player were simple. "I spent 30 years trying to be worthy of the forgiveness Roberto's family gave me. I hope I succeeded, and I hope that anyone listening who carries a secret burden will find the courage to seek the forgiveness they deserve. It's never too late to tell the truth. It's never too late to make things right." The story of Tom Brady's 10-day disappearance became more than a sports story. It became a testament to the power of truth, forgiveness, and redemption. Roberto Alvarez, a humble janitor who died trying to help his family, became a symbol of second chances and the belief that our worst moments don't have to define us. And Tom Brady, the quarterback who went silent for 10 days, found his voice in the most powerful way possible, by finally telling the truth he'd carried for nearly 3 decades. The Roberto Alvarez Second Chances Foundation continues to operate today, helping young people rebuild their lives after making serious mistakes. The foundation's motto, taken from something Roberto used to tell the children at his school, hangs in every office. "One mistake doesn't define your whole life. What matters is what you do after you make the mistake." Sometimes the greatest victories happen not on the football field, but in the quiet moments when we find the courage to face our deepest fears and tell the hardest truths. Tom Brady's 10 days of silence taught the world that even legends are human, that forgiveness is possible, and that it's never too late to make things right.